My heart is beating, keeps on repeating, I'm waiting for you. La 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 la. Oops! Welcome to this episode on transportation in human beings in the chapter Life Process. I know you kids must be wondering, are we going to have a music class? Sorry kids. It's just that because of the topic for our day, that is our heart, I was reminded of this lovely song. Anyway, so let us gear up ourselves to learn more about the seat of love, compassion, passion, desire. I'm your biology teacher. I'm not going to misguide you. You all know all these emotions are actually controlled by your brain. And those of you who did not know, don't get disheartened. Let us learn the circulatory function of heart in our body. But before we learn the circulatory function, we need to know what is the fluid which it circulates. What is the function of that fluid in our body? Is that the only fluid in our body? What is this whole system of circulation called as? The circulatory fluids which transport various substances to all parts of the body are blood and lymph. They are transported in different tubes. Blood is transported to all parts of the body by our heart through tubes called arteries and is brought back to the heart by tubes called veins. Lymph is transported in lymph vessels and is carried from the tissues to the heart. Circulatory system consisting of arteries, veins, heart, and blood is called blood vascular system, and that of lymph vessels, lymph, and nodes is called lymphatic system. Blood consists of two components, plasma and corpuscles. Plasma is a pale yellow, alkaline transparent fluid made up of 92% water and 8% solutes. Various solutes like proteins, nutrients, excretory products, inorganic salts, gases, hormones, etc. are found in the plasma. The blood corpuscles are of three types: RBC, WBC, and platelets. The function of each of these cells is as follows. RBCs, also called as red blood corpuscles or erythrocytes, consist of an oxygen-carrying pigment called hemoglobin. This pigment thus helps in transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide gas. WBC, also called leukocytes, are the basis for providing immunity against pathogens entering the body. In case if injury occurs, platelets help in clotting of blood. Blood is a fluid connective tissue whose functions is as follows: transport of nutrients, transport of respiratory gases, transport of waste products, transport of hormones, maintenance of water balance, regulation of body temperature, maintenance of body pH, body defense and plugging areas of injury. Human blood flows inside tubes called blood vessels. They are of three types: arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries are thick-walled and highly elastic. The lumen of arterioles is narrow. Arteries carry blood from the heart to all parts of the body. Blood flows in jerks because heart is pumping blood into it. They generally carry oxygenated blood. Arteries are normally deep-seated. Talking about veins, the wall of veins is less thickened and less elastic as compared to the arteries. Lumens of veins is wider. Veins are blood vessels which normally carry blood from various parts of the body to the heart. Blood flows smoothly in the veins. They normally carry deoxygenated blood. Veins are superficial in position. Having learned the differences between arteries and veins, now let us learn more about capillaries. Capillaries are very narrow blood vessels having a single layered wall. An artery divides and redivides to form finer branches called arterioles. Each arteriole gives rise to a bunch of capillaries that reach each and every part of the organ. The capillaries reunite to form very fine blood vessels of a second type called venules. Venules join to form veins. Let us now come to the most lovable part of this system, our heart. Heart is a conical muscular structure, reddish in color, with the size of a fist. Its narrow pointed apex is towards the left-hand side of our body. It is covered by a membranous sac called pericardium. The pericardium acts as a shock absorber and helps in frictionless movement of the heart. Heart has 4 chambers, 2 auricles, also called atria, and 2 ventricles. The right and left atria and the right and left ventricle are completely separated by septa called as interauricular septum and interventricular septum respectively. All 4 chambers of the heart are completely separated from each other. Thus, right side of the heart carries deoxygenated blood and left side carries oxygenated blood. Right atria opens into the right ventricle through an aperture guarded by a valve called as tricuspid valve. The left atrium opens into the left ventricle through an aperture guarded by a valve called bicuspid valve. Right atria of the heart receives deoxygenated blood from all parts of the body through superior and inferior vena cava. The left atria receives oxygenated blood from the lungs through the pulmonary veins. The pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs for oxygenation, and the left ventricle carries oxygenated blood to all parts of the body through dorsal aorta. Having learnt how our heart is completely divided into oxygenated and deoxygenated chambers, you all must be eager to learn how the heart circulates blood in our body. Oxygen-rich blood from the lungs through the pulmonary vein comes to the thin-walled upper chamber of the heart called the left atrium. The left atrium relaxes when it is collecting this blood. It then contracts, while the next chamber, that is the left ventricle, expands, so that the blood is transferred to it through the bicuspid valve. When the muscular left ventricle contracts in its turn, the blood is pumped out to the body through the dorsal aorta. Deoxygenated blood comes from the body to the upper chamber on the right, that is the right atrium, through the superior and inferior vena cava as it expands. As the right atrium contracts, the corresponding lower chamber, the right ventricle, dilates. This transfers blood to the right ventricle through the tricuspid valve. The right ventricle pumps it to the lungs for oxygenation through pulmonary artery. Since ventricles have to pump blood into various organs, they have thicker muscular walls than the atria do. Walls ensure that the blood does not flow backwards when the atria or ventricles contract. Hey, wait a minute. We discussed so many things about the heart. But what about those heart sounds which your heart produces when you look at your heart throb? Does a heart beating and a doctor measuring something in your hand got to do something with each other? Check that out. Rhythmic contraction and relaxation of heart is called heartbeat. The contraction of chambers is called systole, and the relaxation of the chambers is called diastole. When the atria and the ventricle is in systole, they cause closure of the valves. And when these valves close, they produce sounds. The sound which is of a lower pitch but of a longer duration is called as lub. And a high-pitched sound but of a shorter duration is called as dub. These sounds are measured by a doctor with the help of an instrument called stethoscope. So now you know that this lub-dub is nothing but your dug-dug. Pulse rate is equal to the heart rate. Talking about blood pressure, it is measured by an instrument called sphygmomanometer. The ratio of systolic pressure to that of diastolic pressure is called as blood pressure. Its normal value is equal to 120 mmHg upon 80 mmHg. The process of circulation, as you learned just now, is that it's not really that simple in case of human beings. Is there a significance of such complication during circulation? Let us learn about circulation in fishes and then compare it with human beings. Fishes show single circulation. They have only a two-chambered heart. The heart receives deoxygenated blood directly from all parts of the body. Then the heart sends this blood to the gills for oxygenation. After oxygenating the blood in the gills, it is sent to all parts of the body. And again, from all parts of the body, blood enters the heart. And in this way, the cycle continues. And as you just now learnt, you can see that blood enters the heart only once. Whereas in humans, blood enters the right side and the left side of the heart, thus resulting in double circulation. It has two components, pulmonary and systemic circulation. Movement of blood from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart is called pulmonary circulation. and movement of blood from the heart to all parts of the body except lungs and back to the heart is called systemic circulation. Double circulation as a phenomena is highly advantageous. The complete separation of the heart into the right side and the left side helps prevent mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. This helps in the efficient supply of oxygen to all parts of the body, which is a need of the animals which constantly require high amounts of energy for maintaining a constant body temperature, for example, as in the case of birds and mammals. In case of animals which do not use energy for the same purpose, the body temperature depends upon the environmental temperature. In case of animals such as amphibians and reptiles, thus, the heart happens to be three-chambered, where some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is tolerated. Coming to the last segment of this episode, let us discuss about this less-known fluid called lymph. Lymph is formed by filtering of the blood through the pores of the capillaries, which result in some amount of plasma along with few proteins and few blood cells to come out into the intercellular spaces and form the tissue fluid, alternatively called as lymph. Lymph is picked up from the intercellular spaces and taken into lymph capillaries. These lymph capillaries join together to form larger lymph vessels, which ultimately drain the lymph back into the blood. Lymph is very similar in composition to that of blood, but of course is colorless with less proteins and no RBC. The function of lymph is as follows. Lymph carries digested and absorbed fat from the intestine. It drains excess fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. And now, let us recall what we learned today. The circulating fluid of human body are of two types, blood and lymph. We also learnt the structure and function of blood vessels. We discussed the structure and function of heart. We also learnt types of circulation in fishes and humans, and also ultimately and finally learnt its significance. From the moment it starts beating till the time it stops, the human heart works tirelessly. In an average lifespan of 66 years, a human heart beats 2.5 billion times without ever taking rest. Like a pumping organ, the human heart provides the power which is needed for life. Before I sign out, hats off to this non-stop, powerful, round-the-clock working organ.